Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our day two stream broadcast of the week four. We call this week four, but this is the week one of group stage for the Victory Road World Cup of Pokemon VGC, sponsored by Elgato, GG Tour, and Metafi. My name is Evan, and I am joined for the first time for myself with Maeve. How are you doing, Maeve?
I'm good. I'm psyched. Those last two sets that the one that I got to commentate and the one that you got to commentate, both went really quickly. So I am very secretly hoping for a game three in this round because I would love to kind of see a little bit more back and forth between some of these trainers, especially because we will be featuring trainers from the United States for the first time in this round. So I'm pretty stoked to see it. I think the United States team is really, really, really good this year. I think they're really strong. And who we will be featuring this week, Sohaib is somebody who is a really accomplished trainer, did incredibly well at NAIC. So it's a match that I've been looking forward to cast for quite a while. So and he is playing Johan Christian Hoff from Norway, and like Ben said earlier, this is I think the first time for Norway to make it this far into the competition. So I think it's pretty exciting for me to get to see, I think, a couple of teams that wouldn't have faced each other. Probably you might not have assumed after the qualifying stages for them to kind of be pitted against each other this week.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think another interesting thing to note is that Norway, and what you see on screen here, Uruguay from last year, they were in the same group as Spain and Italy, so they got booted out in the qualifiers, and now both of them, as sort of partners or twins, are able to move on to the group stage for the very first time and compete with the best of the best. And Norway, I can see from our banter here on the World Cup Discord that they are they were proclaiming to make a very deep run this time, since they are able to make it through just barely with actually a one win and 2 loss record. So that's quite a miracle. And going up against the giants of United States that dominated last year, this is going to be crazy. One more thing I wanted to note is that it's so cool to see that Maeve is going to be casting a match for the United States, and Ben is then going to be casting a match for the United Kingdom. So I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say, right? For with regards to the players, and maybe try not to be as biased during the match itself.
It's easier for me, right? Because I'm not part of the United States team, whereas Ben has been a part of the United Kingdom team for several years at this point. So, the United States team is just me cheering on like my friends and stuff like that. So I am thankful to have friends around the world on different teams that I can cheer for during the World Cup. But like you said too, with Norway and Uruguay, right? They got knocked out by the two teams that ended up going to the finals. So you really cannot be too mad about that performance. And look at how close it is so far this week. The United States
Wow.
3-2 over Norway. A lot of, like we've seen already, really standard teams. I'm seeing a Torkoal in there. That immediately jumps out to me because that does feel a little bit different in a Groudon meta. However, it's that Ice Rider, Calyrex, and Palkia team. So a couple of funky things. Celesteela kind of making its way in there. An Urshifu on a team that doesn't have Colossal is something that also is a little bit funkier to me. But, if you look at these rosters, all of these players are, incredibly talented. So it's nice, especially for me, it's interesting to see Nils face off against Norway as well, I believe. So I think it's going to be put us into a really nice spot to kind of look at this week. And especially this game is really important because if the United States wins, they at least get a tie. And a tie at a bare minimum is huge to try and move on to the playoffs.
This seems to be a very big match for Norway in this position, having to try and get one more win to even things out, and like you said, force a tie or even win out to win the week against the giants of United States. So this will be definitely an interesting match to watch. Chat is warning me to watch myself with the Norway Slender. As you said earlier, like Niels was able to win, but I do want to give credit to the two players that actually managed to win their matches this week, being able to bring interesting teams that catch your opponent off guard. Like the United States are bringing tried and tested teams, but bring teams that have surprises and will be able to steal games 1 and 2 and get wins for your own country. That's very impressive.
Yeah, it looks like even those 2 wins were both 2-0s, interestingly enough, even if the teams were slightly unorthodox. So, it's interesting when you see a team that may not be exactly what you may have prepped for, and then it catches you off guard, and then even if you try and make that adjustment for game 2, you still may end up being 1 or 2 steps behind. So, I like being able to kind of see these players especially. And, Norway, like you said, if they are trying to force a tie or win out, they have a lot of competition ahead of them. Emilio Forbes, the Secaucus winner of this year, also runner-up at Worlds. And then Sohaib and Justin, I believe Justin Burns as well was the last one. So Sohaib, NAIC top 16 this year, World Cup competitor last year, Atlantic City top 8 in 2020. That was one of the last regionals that I was able to go to besides Dallas pre-COVID, and then North American Internationals top 32 in 2018, whereas Johan Christian Hoff, World Cup competitor last year. But as I've said in cast before, especially even with Yuki a couple of weeks ago, just because you may not have, if you don't have maybe the accomplishments, the thing that is tough is for your opponent to fish for information about you. So you may have a little bit of a leg up just in terms of the fact that the information game is so different. Whereas with Sohaib, you can track the teams that he's been using. He team builds with a really consistent group of players, and they've been using a lot of pretty standard teams. So you can kind of track what they've been doing. Whereas if you don't know too much about Johan could come in and run something that could really throw you for a loop and has a lot of information to counter team you with. But it looks like, first of all, these are going to be some more Groudon teams today.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, in this kind of team league format, you just have to win your match of the week. And if you're able to bring something that catches your opponent off guard, that could be really amazing. And Sohaib actually, on the other hand, is not a stranger to team draft leagues. Having played in a lot of ones and even being a manager in one of them, he's really active and very consistent as well. Both players played last year. Johan this year has a 1-0 record. And in week 1, he used Zacian and Reshiram, and here he's pulling up with a Zacian and Groudon team. Something similar to Rinya's son, except the Grimmsnarl is now a Regieleki. Like earlier, having the Regieleki be able to put on some form of speed and quick offense seems to be very interesting. As Sohaib on the opposing side is bringing Gavin Michaels' Vancouver winning team, and also a team that did so well in NAIC recently, top 4 by Joe, Sohaib's teammate, Joe UX9, Joseph Ugarte. So with this exciting Groudon and Incineroar mirror, I'm curious to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, normally you bring that Gastrodon for a Pokemon like Kyogre on the opposite side of the field, whereas there is no Pokemon on the opposite side of the field that Gastrodon's going to really feel like it needs to be in that match for, whereas, Lunala oftentimes are running Trick Room. If it's a Trick Grimmsnarl with Iron Ball or Lagging Tail, you can still even slow down, probably Lagging Tail, right? You can still slow down something like that Regieleki without having to go for your own Trick Room, get off something like a Meteor Beam into that Incineroar, get rid of a big threat on the team. I think it's kind of tough, right? Because both of these players, they want to have Sun for themselves. But if you set up Sun, you can also benefit your opponent. So it might be pretty interesting to see their positioning and where they switch in. And here are 2 Pokemon that immediately love the Sun in Incineroar and Charizard. And then on the opposite side, Charizard and Regieleki. So we are looking at some pretty fast, pretty strong Pokemon right out of the gate.
Yeah, I think it makes sense for Johan to lead the Regieleki right off the bat. And an interesting point that both players do not want to bring their Groudons in fear of helping the opponent Charizard gain too much momentum with Sun. So a very interesting standoff with the Charizards here. There might be some speed ties, and if we have seen throughout this year of Series 12, there might be shenanigans in the form of Max Rockfall or a Chatty Berry on the opposing side. So this is a very interesting turn 1 to start off our match. Regieleki does have some good control here, being the fastest and threatening a Dynamax onto the opposing Charizard, so that could be some interesting things to take note of.
Yeah, there is going to be a Dynamax on Sohaib's side of the field first. Going to be that Gigantamax Charizard. So looking like that Regieleki did not go for that Dynamax because that would have come out first over that Charizard. So at least you got a little bit of a timing piece on this side. You're not going to have to worry about something like a Max Lightning. But there will be a Dynamax to match most likely that other Gigantamax Charizard on Johan's side of the field. So, like you said, if you've got something like that Max Rockfall from Ancient Power, if that's kind of the move you're carrying, you could do a ton of damage onto the opposing Pokemon unless they're holding that Charty Berry. The moveset has definitely changed since the Rinya Sun team became so popular. Charty Berry was oftentimes the item that was used, whereas, now sometimes you're seeing Life Orb or a couple of different items. Regieleki Regieleki protects, Charizard max guard, so really safe turn here from Johan, while a G-Max Wildfire into that Regieleki, going to do a really good amount of damage through that protect. Most importantly, set up some more residual damage on this Regieleki for later turns. Also showing here Life Orb on that Charizard. Parting Shot into the Charizard on Johan's side. Not going to go off because of that max guard, and then a little bit more residual damage onto this Regieleki, who is not going to be able to hang on for too much longer.
Starting off with a turn straight up Dynamaxing from both sides. Very from Sohaib's end, it seems like the Charizard seems to be very brave to Dynamax in front of the Regieleki, but you have to always remember that there is that Groudon in the back to be able to switch in and completely nullify something like a Max Lightning. So going straight for Max Wildfire to chip the Regieleki and potentially break a Focus Sash seems to be Sohaib's idea here, and not fearing the Max Rockfall coming out from Johan, and also not going for something like Speed Control. The Parting Shot catches the Charizard's Max Guard, so that could be useful for Johan here, as we will see another Speed Tie, but we don't see it here with that Electro Web.
Yeah, Electro Web slowing down both of the Pokemon on the opposite side of the field. Johan also now saw that item in that Life Orb, so going for a very comfortable Max Rockfall here. 4 times effective onto this Charizard, gets the knockout very cleanly, allows you to still have one more turn with your Dynamax. Go for something like a G-Max Wildfire in that next turn possibly, you know, just to try and start building up some really important damage over as these turns move on. However, you're still going to be doing quite a lot of damage to your own Regieleki. Parting Shot going into that Charizard on Johan's side of the field finally was not able to get that on that last turn, but is now going to at least allow for Sohaib to switch in at least one Pokemon, and then maybe bring that Incineroar back in the opposite slot where the Charizard was that got knocked out. But I think now Sohaib is going to have to be really careful of, you know, maybe dealing with this Max Rockfall in possible subsequent games, you know, now that that item reveal was so early. But Lunala will be the Pokemon of choice here on Sohaib's side for where that Parting Shot came out of from the Incineroar. Going to be able to offer up something like a Meteor Beam, especially into that Charizard, I think, and try and do a lot of damage. However, the Shadow Shield is now broken thanks to the sand.
I was curious to see whether the intricacy of setting up a Max Rockfall could bite Johan in the butt by chipping the Regieleki low enough, but Regieleki actually survives the turn and still able to sit on the field. Not so Johan doesn't have to switch any other Pokemon in for this turn, and kind of forces the Incineroar to go for a fake out. So that's a very cool turn 1 Protect plus Max Guard play coming out from Johan. It seems to be paying off, hopefully. And this turn, being able to just easily set the G-Max Wildfire into the Lunala, I think Johan is doing very well to manage the game here.
Yeah, Groudon comes in for that Regieleki, sets the sun for its good buddy Charizard, allowing it to put on a ton of pressure. Lunala, though, gonna protect, trying to not take too much damage here, especially from something like this G-Max Wildfire from the Charizard. Still going to do a nice amount, even through Protect. Does not do nearly as much as, honestly, I would have thought, but it already does the most important thing, which is setting that G-Max Wildfire residual damage. Another Parting Shot from this Incineroar, now getting put at -2 stages of special attack, and then showing what this last Pokemon on Sohaib's side of the field is going to be. You know, I think is at least something for Johan to pay attention to, being this Groudon. Once the Groudon was in for Johan's side, Sohaib felt more comfortable to bring in his own Groudon. Now you're at least getting that Solar Power chip damage, and the G-Max Wildfire chip on the Lunala is going to continue to build as long as it stays on the field.
Yeah, what an intense match. Like, both players really doing what they are supposed to do and doing it so well. Incineroar not fearing the Charizard or the Regieleki's attacks and going for the Parting Shot, then being able to come in again to intimidate the Groudon that's on the field for Johan. And from Johan's end, thinking ahead of time, knowing that the Charizard is already at -1 special attack, then bringing the Groudon in to maximize the damage output. Now Charizard is sitting at -2 special attack, so Johan might just want to let it stay in and dish out as much damage as possible, especially to stop the Lunala from going for something like a Trick Room or maybe even a Meteor Beam to boost that special attack that we all know.
Yeah, absolutely right. Trick Room is a fear always for Lunala, but this Lunala already has its Shadow Shield broken, so it may just feel the need to go for something like a Meteor Beam and get some big damage off and not go for the Trick Room. However, Regieleki switches in here for that Charizard. Lunala also going to take a nice switch out, bringing in the Incineroar. Incineroar is not going to worry about that G-Max Wildfire damage. It's just going to be able to kind of sit here comfortably and kind of handle that and continue to get Intimidate off onto this Groudon, more fake out pressure on the next turn. You know exactly what Incineroar is meant to do, and it does it incredibly well. The Groudon going for a Precipice Blades connects on both Pokemon on Johan's side, gets the knockout on the Regieleki, but does allow possibly for this Charizard to switch back in and get a you know, without any of those special attack drops. Shadow Claw onto the Incineroar. Critical hit did not do too much damage, but should give that Lunala cause to fear when it comes back into the playing field, and both of these Groudons are going to take some G-Max Wildfire chip.
Man, it just feels like we're playing chess here with the same pieces, because there is the Groudon and a Charizard with the potential speed tie, and now if Johan were to bring in the Incineroar, then you kind of have to make a guessing game as to which Incineroar is faster, since we aren't able to deduce from the turns beforehand. So it might be even risky going for a fake out on the opposing Incineroar's end. We also reviewed some speed tiers from the Groudon for that turn, from the previous turn. Sohaib's Groudon moved before Johan's Groudon, so some kind of like there could be some intricacies to the decision making from both players here, as the Incineroar and Groudon are just staring down against each other.
Yeah, but you're also facing down some more parting shots right from this Incineroar, which it has been consistently cycling through. So, you know, it may not want to go for that fake out just based on not knowing how fast it is. It may just want to opt for another parting shot into really any Pokemon on that side of the field, but not enjoy getting either an attack drop, or if the Charizard comes in, a special attack drop, which is looking like Sohaib's Groudon is going to switch out for that Lunala here. Again, once again, still bringing that pressure, but allowing that Groudon to reset its attack stat. But the Groudon on Johan's side of the field has the exact same idea, bringing in the Charizard here. So really, all of these stat drops, not going to be doing a whole lot. However, fake out into Lunala, not going to do really much at all. Fake out into the Charizard that swaps in, also not really going to matter. Is going to mean some extra solar power chip, though. More G-Max Wildfire chip onto that Lunala as well.
Well, having that like chip damage seems to be working better for Johan here, as Lunala is all of a sudden down to just half HP, and having both the fire types on the field for Johan is useful, since they don't take the wildfire damage and they get stall out wildfire turns. And what a good 2 turns of switching the Charizard out and switching it back in safely to take the fake out from the Incineroar, to then be the fastest on the field to be able to threaten damage with these few turns of sun remaining.
Yeah, and honestly, you've got Groudon in the back too, so Groudon could always switch in when the sun changes, help to boost up your Charizard, but Charizard going for a double target with this Heat Wave. It is enough to knock that Lunala out, most importantly, so now you're no longer facing something like that threat of a Trick Room or a Meteor Beam. Incineroar going for the Throat Chop onto the opposing Incineroar, possibly trying to block a parting shot, which would have gone possibly into the Charizard on the opposite side of the field. So a really nice reveal of that Throat Chop, preventing this Incineroar from continuing to parting shot. Groudon going to be coming in once again. Not going to be able to reset the sun if you're Sohaib, as these are your last 2 Pokemon.
Wow, both players are just playing so well, like going for the plays that they have to go for, but with the Charizard being on the field, being the fastest and putting out just so much damage with Heat Wave and the residual damage of the G-Max Wildfire, Johan is in very good control here, and Charizard is just able to keep like pressing the damage button here. To sort of help with future games, both players are really getting so much good information, particularly in this mirror, to know which Pokemon are faster, so they really do have to take a lot of notes. We know that Johan's Incineroar went for fake out earlier as well.
Yeah, Protect from this Charizard means that Stone Edge is not going to be able to get that knockout on this turn. Parting shot from the Incineroar on Johan's side into the Groudon, dropping that attack stat. just trying to allow possibly for your own Groudon to come in. You can switch it back in later with your own Incineroar, get some more Intimidates off, get another Parting Shot. This Groudon on the opposite side of the field is not able to really do anything to drop those stats unless it's carrying something, like a Sword Stance, which is not exactly the most common move on Groudon. We've seen it a couple of times throughout this season, but I do not believe Gavin Michaels had it on his team. Flare Blitz from the Incineroar, though, into the Groudon on Johan's side of the field is not enough to get the knockout. It brings it very, very close. Sunlight does fade this turn, so I think that might actually be better for Johan because that means that his Charizard is not going to be taking any more damage from that solar power.
Wow, this is cool. The G-Max Wildfire faded from both ends and allows Johan's Groudon to survive. However, we do know that Sohaib's Groudon is faster, so Sohaib's Groudon should be able to go for a quicker move if it's able to survive the Charizard here. So curious to see what's going to happen.
Charizard getting a Heat Wave off onto this Incineroar, and Groudon gets the knockout onto that Incineroar. Possibly trying to fish for a burn onto that Groudon, but does not get one. Precipice Blades won't hit the Charizard, but it does hit the Groudon. So Groudon with 9 HP, not exactly going to be standing up very strong against an opposing Groudon with Precipice Blades. However, you do still have the ability to bring in your Incineroar here. You can get a Fake Out. We haven't seen a Protect from that Groudon yet, so you may just assume it's holding something like that Assault Vest. So Incineroar able to come in, get an Intimidate off, bring this Groudon to -2 for its attack, and possibly just allow for you to get a Fake Out, and then maybe just go for some more Throat Chops and, Heat Waves into that Groudon slot if need be. Pretty looking like you're kind of wrapping up this game here really well for Johan. That Fake Out showing just to make that Charizard make sure it does not stop there. Another Heat Wave brings that down to the bottom 25% of its HP.
Yeah, I think if both players know their damage calc well, maybe you can deduce the item on the Groudon with that Heat Wave damage. I can't say for sure, so as we see this last blow coming out from the Charizard from Johan's side, so interesting to see like the dynamics of both Groudon speed tiers and also the Incineroar. Johan having the faster Incineroar, being able to Parting Shot earlier, being able to go for the Throat Chop into the opposing Incineroar does help so much. And I like the idea of switching the Charizard out, bringing it back in to just try and clean up the game, and it really did so. So really heads up and well done to Johan for taking this first game against Sohaib, a very strong player.
Yeah, and something that you also brought up during the game that I would love to reiterate is, that G-Max Wildfire doing that residual damage, your Charizard doesn't need to be the strongest Pokemon in the whole world. If it is able to come back in late game, get a bunch of Heat Waves off, you don't need to get nearly as many Heat Waves off onto the Pokemon on the opposite side if they've been sitting for 4 turns and taking that G-Max Wildfire damage, because you're still able to do a decent chunk of damage, but you don't have to worry about maybe taking as many turns to do it. Allows you that kind of opportunity to switch around and position a little bit more. Like we saw, it was a very position-heavy game. All the Pokemon consistently switching in and out. Nobody really wanting to kind of stick around for too long because those Incineroars on opposite sides of the field were kind of running rampant with stat drops, with Intimidate or Parting Shot, and just kind of being nuisances overall. So, I think for Sohaib, well, I think that the G-Max Charizard was a nice option in Game 1 because you weren't sure about Ancient Power being a move on the opposite Charizard. I think maybe you need to kind of go for something that's a little bit Trick Room heavy, maybe lead with your Lunala, go for a Meteor Beam, and then go for possibly a Trick Room on the next turn. But there is the Lunala Grimmsnarl lead, so bringing out a Pokemon that could do a nice amount of damage. But Charizard, Regieleki are 2 Pokemon that would love to go for something like an Electro Web and a G-Max Wildfire to break that Shadow Shield and do a ton of damage.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense from Johan to keep going for damage. Notably, Johan also didn't bring his Zacian into the matchup. It does make so much sense against the opposing team. So going straight for damage and having the option to break Lunala's Shadow Shield seems to be possible. From Sohaib's hand, the Grimmsnarl could set up screens or could even maybe go for something like a Fake Out onto the Regieleki. That could be useful. But I do agree, Maeve, that Sohaib does have to lean towards the Trick Room strategy, and it does show here by leading with the Lunala. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think Fake Out could be a really interesting option here. However, going to be a Gigantamax first off out of the gate, I believe, with this Gigantamax Charizard. Again, we've seen how strong this Pokemon is throughout literally every single version of the format. just one of those Pokemon that can put on so much pressure, and especially, you know, onto a Pokemon like Lunala, where you can just continue to do, you know, allow this pressure to build up, even if you may not be able to get a ton of damage off. Light Screen from the Grimmsnarl here, trying to boost that special defense so that the Lunala is not taking as much damage. Regieleki going for a Volt Switch here onto the Lunala, so allowing for Johan to reposition a critical hit as well, which definitely makes sense. I was like, that is a lot of damage for Lunala that had looked so bulky through Protect in Game 1. This does allow, though, for this Groudon to switch in, and this does mean, you know, this Lunala is moving last, but that could still just be the speed tiers of Lunala, or it could have just gone for a Trick Room right out of the gate, so now we kind of have to pay a little bit more attention. G-Max Wildfire from the Charizard, though, going to go first into this Lunala. This is a ton of damage. It is not enough for the knockout, though. So Lunala is still able to hang on only for really one more turn. Lunala goes for a Moongeist Beam instead, so no Meteor Beam, no Trick Room, just going with that classic tried and true move of Moongeist Beam, just to get a nice chunk of damage off onto this Groudon. What was that Regieleki slot? Solar Powered Chip onto this Charizard, but most importantly now, this G-Max Wildfire Chip is enough to knock that Lunala out. It looked like it was right on the cusp there of doing exactly enough damage, and then this Grimmsnarl finally takes its first little bit of damage after turn 1.
Wow, that Light Screen just paying dividends for Sohaib's side. Wow, it's crazy to see the Lunala surviving there, but I thought it could have been cooler if the Lunala went for something like the Meteor Beam onto the Charizard. But I think Sohaib is just keeping it safe and trying to preserve that item, doing significant damage into, good damage into the Groudon. But at this point, this seems to be very tough for Sohaib to try and fight back. Maybe Grimmsnarl has some form of speed control to control the Charizard, and maybe help Sohaib's Charizard be able to consistently move first to target into the Groudon and try and fight back in this situation.
Yeah, I completely agree, you know, because now you have the Charizard on the opposite side of the field who is also going to want to match Gigantamax for Gigantamax. If you're Sohaib, you are happy that your Gigantamax, of course, is now staggered after Johan, so you will get some free uninterrupted turns of at least being able to confirm hits onto Pokemon on the other side of the field, because there would not be something like a Max Guard after this turn. You know, for Johan, it's, you know, it becomes a little bit tougher because you may not be able to stop yourself from a Max Rockfall later, but Max Guard from the both Charizards here, actually. Both Charizards playing safe. Trick from the Grimmsnarl onto the Charizard on Johan's side of the field, finally revealing exactly what that Grimmsnarl is running. Stone Edge onto the opposite side of the field, and some Solar Power Chip now out to bat as well. So the Grimmsnarl taking some more G-Max Wildfire damage, but very, very defensive Gigantamax Charizard turns.
Yeah, I feel like Johan, this Max Guard does make sense, but while unfortunately Sohaib also matches the Max Guards, and now it comes down again to a speed tie between both Charizards. We saw the Max Guard going first from Johan's side, then we also saw the Solar Power Chip from Sohaib's side, so this is definitely a Charizard speed tie. But having the Trick on the Grimmsnarl, possibly the Iron Ball item to be able to reduce Charizard's speed on Johan's side should be useful, but showing Stone Age from the Groudon is just so threatening from Johan's side. I think it really comes down to speed ties and the last Pokemon on Sohaib's side to be able to close up the game.
Lagging Tail is the item here, and revealing the Lumberry on that Charizard. So that means that Lagging Tail will go into effect next turn. It is not going to stop this Max Rockfall into the opposite Charizard. Does not get the knockout, but does importantly get some more chip damage thanks to this Sandstorm that is now kicked up. Does mean that the Charizard's G-Max Wildfire on Sohaib's side will not do as much damage because it doesn't have that Solar Power boost, but it still does a ton of damage onto the Groudon, and it is going to allow for that Groudon to possibly get chipped on that next turn. But Stone Edge actually avoids the Charizard here, but I don't think that Charizard is all too worried. Actually still able to hang on through that Sandstorm chip. We are actually very, very close to that knockout. I thought it was for sure. And this Groudon taking that 1/8, it lives on 1 HP. Oh my goodness. We are hitting really, really close with these bits of residual damage here.
Wow, what a crazy match. This is just so intense, really neck and neck. And now, from Sohaib's end, Charizard is then able to go for that final move, with final Dynamax move. And if he has potentially maybe an Incineroar in the back or Venusaur, maybe he can go for an Airstream to boost its partner. But wow, like having being able to survive on 1 HP on the Groudon, that's really clutch, and just allows like Johan way more options instead of being forced to switch in a Pokemon from the back.
Yeah, Charizard protecting here. That Lagging Tail would have meant it would have gone last, maybe taken something like a Max Rockfall from the opposite side of the field, but Grimmsnarl goes for a Reflect, trying to stop some of this damage from these big attacks from the Groudon.
Whoa.
Max Rockfall from the Charizard also being confirmed here. Onto the Charizard on Johan's side, does still so much damage through that Protect. Then also showing that Life Orb chip from the Charizard on Sohaib's side does take it down. I think if you're going to go out, you're going to go out with a bang of doing a bunch of damage onto the Charizard. Heat Crash from the Groudon here, going to target onto that Grimmsnarl is not enough to get the knockout. However, this Grimmsnarl is still going to take some Sandstorm chip, and it's still going to take some Wildfire chip, so I do not believe that it is long for this battlefield. Groudon also getting knocked out by the Wildfire as well, so I think this is one of those weird battles where it's just consistently showing how important that chip damage is and how it kind of can change the positioning of a game if you think something's going to get knocked out and then it lives on 1 HP.
Yeah, man, what a crazy situation. Like, turn of events, and right now, Johan is up 3 Pokemon to only 1 on Sohaib's. Yeah, just 1 Groudon, so this seems to be very tough. But I think like having the moves correct and being able to win some form of speed ties, allowing the Pokemon, and having like the Groudon to survive on just 1 HP, is just paying so much dividends for Johan's side. I think Sohaib's Reflect on the Grimmsnarl is like a last ditch effort, not wanting any Pokemon like this Groudon to come in and take unnecessary damage is useful, and it just comes down to all just this Groudon to hopefully be able to close out the game. Unfortunately, this Heat Wave connects and just does so much damage into the Groudon.
Yeah, Light Screen also wearing off that turn, and that Charizard did not get the burn that I'm sure it would maybe try to fish for on that Groudon. It's being boosted by the sun that this Groudon set up. Groudon, though, did change the weather away from being, that Sandstorm, so it's at least not taking, you're not taking any chip damage on your side from that Sandstorm going off. You're a little bit freer from that. But if you are using a Pokemon to kind of go 1v3, I think Groudon would be one of the Pokemon you would choose as long as your Precipice Blades connect. Shadow Claw, though, doesn't have a chance to miss, so it's going to go for that Shadow Claw into the Charizard. Got that knockout, but Flare Blitz into that Groudon is enough for a knockout thanks to a big critical hit from this Incineroar. Groudon goes down, and that means we have a pretty quick 2-0 for our Game 3 today, and that means that Norway, after this game, has tied the United States 3-3. So now, both of these teams are really trying to fish for those final win at least, possibly 2 wins to either tie or get the full win overall on the week.
Man, this is so crazy. Like reaching a 3-3 with both Norway against United States. Feels like Norway is just riding the high of being able to get out of groups, the qualifier stage for the previous week, right? And then just coming in. And then for US, it might just be the first week of games here, so trying to get their bearings. But I just want to commend maybe the Norway side for just bringing teams that catch your opponent off guard. Like Reggie Lecky seldom run vote switch these days, and that vote switch crit just helps so much. And like Charizard being able to catch the life orb Charizard on Sohaib's end and just being able to win speed ties and go for max rock for just helps so much, and really help the game, make the game much easier for Johan's side. So I just can't believe that this is a 3-3 that we are seeing right now, and I'm curious to see what the other 2 matches will bring and see how hard these countries are going to fight. You already know like what your from the first few matches, what Norway tends to bring and what United States tends to bring. There's so many mind games in play here.
Yeah, that's one of those games, too, that just consistently gets more complicated the more you think about it. Just because of all of the, the Light Screen and the Reflect and the Solar Power and the Life Orb chip and then the Sandstorm chip and the G-Max Wildfire chip, there's just a lot going on, right? So it's really commendable to Johan to just kind of keep all of that in track in his head while he's playing, because it is a really tough game to win when you put yourself in a state of having to track so many things. Even though you can press that little info button on the 3DS, on the Nintendo Switch, and get, a little bit of a reminder of how many turns are left. But like you said, it's really interesting how well Norway is doing, right? Because Norway does probably have a bit of a chip on their shoulder. I feel like they've got a lot to prove when you're playing against a giant in this format like the United States. If you get a win, it's a really big deal. Like when France beat Japan last year, that was such a big week for the whole format, because it kind of showed a lot of France's might. It put Japan out earlier than a lot of people expected, because Japan is just such a strong team year after year. And I think Norway is on track to continue to do something very similar if they can continue to perform this well in this group stage. But Evan, we still have one more match for today, and that is going to be with the United Kingdom and with Peru. And that is a very important rematch from last year's group stages. So do not go anywhere, anybody. I am so psyched to be able to bring this to you on this next round. So stick around and we will be back very shortly.